Together for Christine Hershey. Come on, founder of Hershey Calls Communications.
40 years.
He made me say it. Don't blame. 40 years good.
I'm already feeling like the elder
Oh
on the
no,
group,
no,
you know?
no. You make it look good. Jay-Z said the new 40s 30 and 30s 20. You know how the numbers go. Whatever you want it to be. All right. Our next panelist is Raina. Rena, come on, you put your hands together for Rena. She's over corporate responsibility, senior specialist. Come on. Come on, y'all gotta do better than that. And then for Wells Fargo Bank Community Relations Senior Consultant, would you put your hands together for Luis Gonzalez? Come on. He got a lot of money. You gotta do better than that. Oh, man. Ooh, y'all. I see somebody back there, they heard Wells Fargo. They was like, yes! I need my loans paid, student loans paid. And then he's a board member, and he's just a catalyst. He's a nonprofit guru. I mean, he knows how to find money where there is no money. Put your hands together for Pete Parker.
Welcome, friends.
All right, so how we're gonna start this off, we're gonna allow every panelist to kind of tell you about themselves, their area of expertise, and just kind of give you a summation of what they believe about corporate responsibility. And then we'll dive into some questions. And then by that time, if you have any questions, I'm gonna ask you to write them down. And then I'm gonna bring the mic to you. And this is what I need you to do. You gotta say your name, what school or what area you're from, and then give them a question, not a summary. I'm a preacher. Don't preach. Just give them your question, and then we'll be able to respond back that way. Don't give them 5 questions. Give them your best question, and then we'll respond that way. Is that all right? Are we all good? We got it? Got to make sure you give them your name and everything. All right. So we're going to work on, so we'll start over here with Mickey. Mickey, if you just would like to tell us about what you do and what you think about corporate, how social responsibility plays a role in the marketplace, in corporations, and in all that you do, and what do you, what is your expectations in social responsibility? So.
Well, for me, hi, my name is Mickey. I have been doing this work for 20 years now, and I've been doing it in a variety of fashions. So when I started at a talent agency, and I started working in their foundation, and because of that, my expertise in corporate social responsibility has really been within the entertainment industry, and helping entertainers kind of figure out how do they give back. How do they connect to causes that are impactful? What do they say yes to? What do they say no to? If they want to start their own foundation, should they just do a PSA? Should they start their own nonprofit and have its own organization or not? So I started doing that a long, long time ago. From CAA, I went on to work for Kanye West. Then I switched to the other side of that work, and I did corporate philanthropy, and I worked at JCPenney in Dallas. And I had to figure out for all 2,200 of their stores and 220,000 employees, what do they do to give? In each and every one of the different communities where there is a store location. Then I came back and did that for Dr. Phil. So I kind of came back to the entertainment industry, but again, looking at scale. Dr. Phil has 4 to 6 million people watching him every day. So how do you talk to them about giving back and what Dr. Phil is passionate about and how you might be able to join that? And so for me, I think what I am most passionate about in the work that I do in corporate social responsibility is being able to use a pretty big platform, depending on who I'm working with, to figure out how you're very creative about creating a narrative and hopefully seeing change.
And Mickey is the most generous person in the world with her praise and connections and wisdom. So get your questions ready. She's a force. So as he already ratted me out, I am celebrating the 40th year of my agency this year. We're the first social enterprise in the communications space, meaning we work 100% on issues and causes that help the world evolve. We were the first to bring communications to the nonprofit sector in any sort of meaningful way. Nonprofits often don't have the resources to tell their stories or raise the money they need or attract the folks that they need to do more of their work. So we spend a lot of time doing that. And I actually think of corporate social responsibility at sort of the macro level, in that I think if corporations would step up and do business the way they should, the whole world would be a better place. So looking at it from a meta lens of what kind of change you can make, then down to individual corporate entities, where can they work on a specific issue or cause that actually moves the needle on something. So I'm not a fan of just corporate logos on things all over the place, but I am a huge fan of corporations finding the impact they want to make and then investing in that heavily enough and long-term enough to make a difference. So I love everything about what I do right now. I think that this is one of the points of light in our very fractured world right now, where folks stepping up, doing the right thing is just an inspiration that keeps me forever young, I hope, and doing this work. So.
Nice. Hi, good morning. I just want to preface that I'm getting over a cold, so forgive me that I have a cough drop in my mouth. So my name is Rina De Assis, and I'm very passionate about shared value. And what that means is that I truly believe that companies can actually still address their bottom line and have an impact by addressing a social issue and still make a profit. In order for a company to do that, it's definitely a very strategic approach, and it's always top-down. My background is I fell in love with CSR before I even knew what that acronym meant. When I was putting myself through college, I started an employee volunteer program for a company called O'Neill Inc. in Irvine. And I was fortunate enough to have the CEO of the company believe in me. That wasn't what I was hired for. I was in the marketing department, but I just thought, I love volunteering. Why don't I just get all my coworkers to go with me? And if that's something that I can give you as a takeaway, that it really doesn't matter what you're hired in as far as your title and the type of industry that you're in. If you're really passionate in something and that you want to influence your employer, you can go ahead and take that initiative and show that you can develop a program and that it can create an impact. So that's how I started my love for CSR. And from there, my background has been in corporate, government, and nonprofit. I've ran an international nonprofit. I was the executive director for 3 years. And we helped women find jobs and remain employed. It was really focused on economic development. And I think it's really important to have experience in nonprofit, ideally before you dive into CSR, so that way you understand the other side. When you understand the other side, I think the great part is if you're given the opportunity to advocate for nonprofits and causes while you're working with companies, whether that be clients or that they're actually your employer, you really understand what it means to be in a nonprofit and what it takes to run a very sustainable nonprofit. So CSR is people, planet, profit, and I truly believe that we can make an impact through collaboration.
Well, thank you. First of all, good morning. I'm happy to be here, and I'm glad to see so many people attending the panel. I think it's such a great subject matter that we're discussing today. I was just sharing a story to Rina a few years ago. You know, when I was doing some theses on CSR, people said, what's CSR and how is that business related? You know, and it's amazing that that's the thought process that was occurring a couple of years ago, but here we are. Now CSR is a mainstream word. Most folks know what CSR is and corporate social responsibility is. And I commend you for being here and learning more about this, because it is a subject matter that we continue to discuss on a corporate level, on a business level. It'll be integrated in how we do business, I think, moving forward as a whole, as a country. So this is a great opportunity to learn from folks that have been doing this for quite some time and really being engaged with the conversation as you develop and move forward in your careers. So as I mentioned earlier, my name is Luis Gonzalez. I oversee the Wells Fargo Foundation here for the region. We are the largest corporate donor in the Los Angeles area. So we provide a lot of support for nonprofits and cause-oriented initiatives throughout the country. So I'm honored to be here and honored to be able to do that. About 17 years working in the community relations field, communications field. I too started in the media relations side. I don't know if there's like a theme going here. But I think as you start engaging yourself into the community, learning about the different issues, you start realizing the impact that business has on our communities. And so I started in the media field working for Univision, NBC, Telemundo as well. Transitioned through also on the marketing side with the Billboard, the Latin Grammys, the Billboard Latin Awards. So I think there's a huge trend here in what we're doing because you get to see a little bit more on how business is done from two different aspects and multiple lenses. And so now I'm fortunate to be here. I have a service mentality. I'm a former Marine, so obviously serving our communities is very important. So my mindset and my frame of mind has always been about service and how we can help others achieve and continue to grow. So looking forward to your questions and continue to be here with the team here. I think we have a great panel lined up for you. So look forward to your questions.
All right, great job. Name, school, question. Pete Parker, University of Arizona. Bear down. Question, how big of a ripple can you create? I represent the nonprofit side of things. I work with nonprofits to build up their bases of support. I work with their boards, I work with their development teams to raise funds. We're constantly knocking on their doors to match our missions with their needs, wants, and employee interests. So I think that's why I was brought to this panel, was to balance it out. Because it's hard as nonprofits to raise money. We're competing with thousands of others in our little communities to get our message to them. And they have to look at us, and I've been on your side before, to figure out which organizations best fit our culture, our needs, our mission, our programs, our people. So it's a tough balance. It's a tough quest on both sides, but it's a lot of fun. And my only recommendation is get involved, do good service, get connected. I can volunteer with each of these people, have never met them before. We can be volunteering, cleaning up a neighborhood or what have you. We meet them, great things happen.
Let me ask this question. Now in the 21st century, as things are changing and evolving, how do we package our calls to get collaboration, to get corporations to fund, to be a part, to partner with us? How do we begin to engage? Many people have great causes, many people work for great nonprofits, or many people have great things that are happening, whether it's Instagram or things, and they want to partner with, whether it's celebrities or they want to partner with corporations. Is there a difference from yesterday's way of thinking about packaging and getting collaboration to what is happening now?
Sure, I'll take the first stab, being from the corporate side on this. One of the things that we see often, or I see often, is duplicate nonprofits, okay? What that means is that you have 20 nonprofits doing the same exact thing, having the same exact cause, same exact mission in the community. That's a challenge, because what you're doing is you're piecemealing the effort, right? And it's difficult because I think a few years ago, there wasn't a lot of nonprofits as a whole doing a lot of work in the communities. The concept of nonprofit, you know, we always say this, and it's important to know this, nonprofit is not, it's just a tax designation. It's an actual business. You are an actual business operation if you're a nonprofit. So the first thing I always say, just because you're a nonprofit and you're thinking, I'm gonna start a charity and I wanna be a nonprofit, you have to understand that it's a business, right? And just like anything else, you are a competing business. And what ends up happening is that when you have so many nonprofits doing the same thing and all asking for the same amount of money, you're actually, this is my personal opinion, it creates a challenge from a corporate perspective to really start looking at how we're going to move that needle, right? Because if we don't support one nonprofit and another nonprofit's asking us for the same amount of money, what challenges does that create from a reputation perspective for us, right? So one of the things that I think that we've definitely seen a shift now is a lot of folks say, I want to do something for my community, I'm going to start a nonprofit. And so I think from a corporate perspective, it would be better if folks in that arena looked at what was happening. And I think this is it's happening now. A lot of nonprofits are now having symposiums and workshops to say, hey, how can we align? How can we work together to make a difference? And I think that's an approach that I think would bring a lot of value moving forward to how we support and sponsor and give back to the community if we can align ourselves, because we want to measure, right, how we're making a change. And it's difficult when 10 different organizations doing the same exact thing approach us, and each one of them is going to give us metrics that, you know, we'd love to see as a whole versus individual.
I want to riff off of that because that's a change that I've seen. We used to consult with a lot of individual nonprofits, and now there's a big interest with funders and partners of ours helping bring networks of nonprofits together, whether it's through a place-based lens or on an issue base, where we both help individuals learn to tell their stories better to raise more money or do whatever it is their individual goals are, but more importantly, to connect with each other and start speaking and working toward an end goal together. And that's super helpful, I think, and I do hear from corporate partners that it makes it make more sense of the landscape then that they're asked to fund.
And picking up on what you were saying, I'd actually talk about the story. And that's one of the things that I see in the entertainment side of philanthropy. How do you tell your story? So there absolutely are so many organizations that are very, very similar. And what's going to make you distinct? And it's not just how you tell your story, but who's telling your story. So is it the community that's impacted? Is it the young person that received a service? Is it the families whose lives were changed? How are they telling that story? How are you developing them to tell that story? And what are you using to tell it? So what tools on social, your phone, you can make movies now on your phones. And so really thinking about the narrative piece of that. One of the things I've been working on this year is a grant from one large foundation that had 100 organizations in 12 cities around the country all to come together around one issue. And each one of those organizations and cities were chosen because of how they told their story. And so the power in that is to see as a collective across the country, how do you amplify an issue through narrative?
I'm going to chime in from the nonprofit side. Every community has its needs. And when I say community, it's not just the location you're in. I'm working with a community right now to address the aviation workforce, the future workforce. So we're not only trying to partner and collaborate with corporations, we're talking to state officials, we're talking to education officials, we're trying to get the whole mix so we can sit at the table to address the workforce need and figure out a solution to move or bend, like I used to say, currently say, move the needle.
Yeah.
How do we make that happen? So we have to get a variety, a diverse group of people together, including students, because you're the future workforce, and find out how we can make that happen for whatever community or industry it is.
Right. And lastly, in agreement with everyone else, I think if you're coming from a nonprofit side, when you're approaching a company, you have to look at their corporate giving pillars. And so that's usually available on their website, under philanthropy and CSR, whatever it may be. And so it would save you time if you are approaching a company and you know that they only focus on environment and disaster relief, but yet you're approaching them for an education fund. So it's always good to do your research. I mean, ultimately, companies only have a set amount of dollars and time for particular social issues. There's usually about 3 that they focus on. So when you do your research and whether you work in a nonprofit or you're advocating for one, do your research on what the company's history is, who are the nonprofits that they already are working with, and also you want to add value. If you already know the nonprofits that they're working at, what's going to set your nonprofit apart that you're advocating for or work for, and what is it? And each company is going to be different. Some are very I really want PR exposure. Tell me all about the marketing and PR benefits. That's what's going to drive me. Whereas some, which I tend to admire more, are all about impact. Okay, I may not be as concerned as far as the PR side, but tell me, how are we going to address that social issue, and then can we be part of that story, which makes that story more legit. So when they're able to contribute, whether that be with money or their volunteers, with their employees, that then they're able to say, we really addressed hunger by participating in a program for a year, and we lent out our employees for X amount of hours, and we also invested and developed this program. That to me is where the real story than passively cutting a check. So if you can approach it that way, to me that's the trend, is that it's really about impact, but you should be able to convince the company that you're collaborating rather than you're just coming in asking for a paycheck.
Rena, let me ask, and this is for the whole panel, what skills, characteristics, personality traits does one have to work successful in this arena? Because some people feel like, I know some people, they have a heart that They may have the heart or the desire, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the skill set or the temperance.
Right, thank
To
you for
operate.
asking.
Great question.
So I would say if you're pursuing a career in social responsibility, and honestly that can mean in the realm of corporate, and then also you could be working in nonprofit. I think it's really important to be strategic. Strategic in a sense that you want to be able to deliver and have thought process and the tactics that you're going to implement, tactics, the actions, right? And so when you're coming up with a plan and whoever you're working with, you want to know that if you're going to move the needle, you want to be able to be a thought leader. And you're working collaboratively with your team or with external internal partners. I think communication is key. You're going to have to convince your employer or your client internally about what the plan is that you've thought out, and then also messaging, whether you're working with people in the media or other nonprofits, having them collaborate. So being strategic, communications, and then I think it's also really important to be influential. The relationships that you build are always going to carry on to your next projects, and so it's important that to not get caught up and wooed by people's titles, and recognize people for who they are, because frankly you don't know when you're going to cross paths with them 5 years from now. And try to be that person that's not always asking for things, but actually being a resource. And when you could do that in your career and then in social responsibility, you become that resource. And so people want to work with you, people want to collaborate with you. And regardless of where you are, they just see you as a resourceful person. And it's super fun to know that at the end of the day, your work is really all about impact.
A thing I'd like to add to that is I think it's a lot about clarity. I think there's sort of a movement right now where a lot of folks recognize broadly that they want to do good or they want to make a difference, but the quicker you can get clear on what part of that resonates with you and what your personal story is. I'm thinking of 2 interviews I had with young folks just this week where one, getting in to see me is kind of like an act of God anyway, so I'm always interested to see who prepares how. And one of them clearly had not done much, and I said, well, what are your career goals? And he said, well, I just want to do good. And I said, oh, that's great. And how do you want to do that? And he was just completely flummoxed. Whereas then, literally the next day, I had this young woman who had done her research, and she said, I see you've done a lot of work in the foster care arena. That resonates with me because that was my story. I don't know how communications can impact that, but it seems to me that if we can make some progress in the policy advocacy, it was like, whoa, okay. And so she got, delegated on for this particular spot that we're looking on. So it's just, again, personal clarity. The more you can get real with whatever the change is you want to make, the more helpful that is to the rest of us trying to help you along.
I think also the preparation part of that, the research, that between those 2 examples, that's the piece that always stands out to me, because I too get I just love to give back, which is fantastic. But have you read an industry trade?
Yeah.
Ever? Have you ever looked at the Hollywood Reporter? Have you ever looked at Billboard magazine? Have you ever looked at something in the financial sector, in the Financial Times, to know what is happening in that industry? What does the leadership of that industry do to serve? What organizations are they supporting? What trends are they seeing? That kind of research just helps you have a more vibrant conversation. Because for anything, for your next job, for your success in class, it's all about developing relationships. And relationships it's communication and having vibrant conversation and wanting to connect with somebody again. And all of that is preparation and research.
Great point.
I'll second that. I think, 3 core things that I always like, if I had a chance, give you guys a little bit of insight of some skills. And I think we kind of all mentioned here. But one is learn to build relationships. I think that the biggest challenge that I see is that, folks come up and ask before they even know who you are. Yeah. And, you go back to basics, right? When you meet a friend, you talk to people, you have to build a relationship with someone. You have to know who they are, what their interests are, what they like to do, what are they all about. And somewhere along the lines, you know, when you're stuck in a system that's so linear, right? You do A, you go B, C, D, E. You forget that sometimes it doesn't work that way. We're all humans and we need to build relationships. And everything we do from a corporate giving perspective is built on a relationship. So if you need to work on your relationship skills, how to talk to people, how to communicate, I know that's a big message here. I really suggest that you focus on that. That's a really big deal. That's going to help you not only in this field, but any field you choose to go on to. Somewhere along the lines, we forgot how to network, right? How to talk to people. And that's very important because this is how we work in this environment, right? It's about relationships, right? We're working with people and working with a lot of money, so we want to make sure that we're having those relationships last long term. The second thing is, you know, don't be afraid of failure. I think a lot of times, you know, everyone thinks that they got to get it right. It has to be perfect. If not, it's not going to go through. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. In your failures, you learn, right? So it's important to not be afraid of that. And sometimes you're going to get told no. I mean, unfortunately, I have to do that sometimes until folks know. They're great organizations. But it doesn't mean that we won't do it in the future. It doesn't mean that we can't revisit this again. And if those individuals were to say, oh, fine, he said no, I'm never going to reach out to you, then that's a loss, right? And we don't want that. So I want to say to you, you know, even though you may encounter that negative resistance sometimes, or somebody may tell you, no, we're not going to support your idea, keep moving forward. Because that idea that maybe wasn't that great back then may be the next best idea in the future. So learn to have a little bit of a tough skin and say it's okay. A no just means I have to learn from it and keep moving forward. And then have a service mentality, we saw it, like a service mentality, right? We have a saying, community before self, right? Understand that you're part of a bigger whole, right? The things that we're doing together as a community are going to impact and leave a legacy for future generations. One day when you guys are on a panel and you guys are doing your thing, remember that because you're setting the roadmap, so to speak, for other generations to come. So it's really about the bigger impact of a community and as a whole. So have that mindset that what we do, you're a collective, that you're impacting your community, even if it's one thing that you do. It's about the bigger picture, and don't be afraid to be a part of that and showcase those experiences that you have so that you're able to then better build your relationship and your career moving forward.
I am constantly introducing people, especially young people, to corporations and then nonprofit organizations, and there are two things that I look for. One's a passion. Can I think of others first? Do I put in the extra work, hard work ethic, go the extra mile, go above and beyond, help others, and a smile, a passion and a smile. Smile, building relationships, expanding your career network, your professional network. In this room, if you have not met everybody in this room before you leave, it's a criminal act. You need to meet everybody. You will be running your communities and this country together. I guarantee you, despite wherever you live. You can get jobs by talking to these people. Have a conversation, get their business card, continue that relationship. Passion and a smile makes everything work.
We said relationships a lot. So can we kind of really define what relationships look like, especially in a millennial context of what are relationships and what are some of the don't do's that shows me that those relationships may not be genuine? If we can kind of operate there.
Can I take a stab at it? So I think when you have a relationship and people trust you, it doesn't matter where you end up going, they just want to support your vision. So an example for me would be, at one point I was a media buyer for an agency that focused on lifestyle of health and sustainability, and I was doing marketing work there. And so at that time, I was working with a company called Clear Channel, who's now iHeartMedia. And I developed a relationship with the director of sales, who's now the VP. And that was like so long ago. So whatever job that I ended up in, he ended up being my friend. And so whatever campaign I'm working on, and whether that be I'm with a company or a nonprofit, but because he knows I'm cause-oriented, I can pretty much, and I'm thankful that I can ask like, hey, can you do me a favor? I'm working with the West Hollywood Women's Leadership Conference. I want to promote this event, which is all about empowerment, which is super cool. This year, the theme was on activism. Anyway, and so I'm like, do you think radio spots would be possible? Do you think we can get some interviews? How about some PSAs? That's like thousands of dollars if you're a company. But because I've built that relationship from many years ago, he's like, anything for you. That to me is an example that that person believes in me. I will never be able to pay him back or have that amount of money And frankly, it doesn't even ask me like, hey, you should take me out to dinner, or I should get free tickets somewhere. Like, he actually doesn't ever ask for anything back. I think he just wants to support me because he believes in the projects that I work on. And that to me is a perfect example of the power of relationships, is that you carry relationships along from whatever previous job or client that you're with, and they believe in you, and then you produce, and you're like, guess what? We were able to work with like thousands of people, and you know, and like he's super relaxed about getting his logo, because it's not even, that's not what it's about. At the end of the day, he's just like, you keep doing good, and I'll support you, and it just makes me happy. So I think to me that's like the best example of that. If people believe in you, they're gonna support you, and it's gonna help in your future projects, and that to me is the power of relationships.
When
Yeah.
I first,
No, go ahead. We're clones. You go first, and then I'll.
That's hilarious. When I first started at the talent agency, they actually had rules around developing relationships, and I had never worked anywhere where you actually had to learn it. And I'm so grateful that I got the skills that I did there early on in my career that turned into habits. And so one of the rules was, when you got a phone call, if you weren't at your desk to take the call, and you got back and you had messages from people outside the company, and you had messages from people inside the company, you called inside the company first. Because those people were depending on you for information that they needed to continue on their days doing their business. So you were a good colleague first. Then you called the community, and you had to call everybody back within 20 minutes of getting the message. The next thing that you had to do after you had a lunch or a meeting was write a handwritten thank you note. And I think we've lost the art of writing. And so whether it's an email or a thank you, how are you really communicating and establishing that going back and forth with someone, because you're actually taking the time to say thank you, but also what you're writing within that. So what did you learn about whoever you were talking to? Do you know anything that's happening in their life? When is their birthday? Do they have a dog? Do they have a cat? Do they have kids? How are you continuing these conversations and developing real relationships? And I really am very grateful that I got that kind of thinking around what a relationship should be. Because when I started at that talent agency, I had a dear friend that was at a rival talent agency, and we were not supposed to talk, but we had the same job. And so we were like, I think we could do this better if we actually learned from each other. And today we are business partners and started our company a year and a half ago, 17 years later, because of the relationships that we started there.
Yeah, that's actually, I was going to weigh in with something similar, because your question was about millennials and the difference now. I think a thing that rings true through time is the sincerity. You know, folks know if you're really interested, just like this rule about getting back to folks in order that they need you to keep being effective in their lives. That's how we are. Like, if you think of it from our perspective, we maybe do 3 or 4 things like this a week, and so you have a chance to get noticed here, and then you have a chance to follow up, and you know, it takes tenacity. And also similar to your not taking no, is I think a thing with people in our sector especially is you can't be thin-skinned. So you can say, I met you here, and I may not remember if I met too many people that week to remember them all, but you don't take it as an insult. You just, you know, remind me how you met me and keep going. Mickey and I forget how we met, but
I know,
it was
I
like
do too.
it was a classic where I had a client, a domestic violence
That's right.
client that I thought might be good for Dr. Phil.
And then we became friends.
Exactly. So we connected, and it's just, you know, I don't have her on my call weekly list by any means, but it was like, okay, I like this person.
We had a
and
really good
I thought I
conversation.
could help her, and she could help me, and it was just this mutually beneficial. We clicked, and so, and now I take Mickey. You know, if Mickey calls me, I know to take that call. So it's lifelong. So.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in servant leadership, okay? And what ends up happening is, you know, and it starts as the basics of a relationship, right? It's got to have a mutual benefit. But here's where I think the biggest mistake goes. When I meet people, I don't look at what they can do for me, I look at what I can do for them, okay? So it starts with having that concept of saying, you know, hey, what can I bring to this person I'm meeting? And that's something that I think we've forgotten along the lines, that sometimes it's important about framing the way you approach relationships a little differently, especially in a corporate environment. It's about what you can contribute, and that goes back to what Rena was saying. It's about having that giving approach, right? You want to look at what you bring to that person. How can I help or enlighten or support this person here What can I contribute to that person's goals, objectives, or needs? And that's very important, you know, because if you look at it from the other way around, and I met a lot of people and I talked to a lot of people that actually switch around and say, well, what's in it for me, right? So you meet someone, they're like, great, what's in it for me? That's not the mentality you really want to have. You want to look at this from an approach of how I can help the other individual. And I think that changes your conversation completely. It goes from asking to then looking how you can give, right? And I think that's very important as you're starting your careers, especially if you're interested in working in this field. You have to look at it from that lens. How can I support? How can I contribute? What can I do to be a part of this individual, this corporation, this organization? What's my role in this? So it's very important to look at relationships from that different lens. I think that will give you a different perspective as to when you talk to people. It gives you an idea for you to also keep improving, because all of us here continue to develop and grow. It's a lifelong process. So the more you're able to do that and approach that and maintain that humility and humbleness to say, wait a minute, how can I help you? I think it's going to help you understand a little bit better what building a relationship really means.
This is gold. If you're not taking notes or digesting it, it's a mistake. This is gold. What I'm about to tell you, I'm just regurgitating what they're saying. Relationships, good ones, equal trust, equal respect. Many millennials, I believe, get a bad rap for a variety of reasons. So it's even harder for you guys to build even more meaningful relationships with leaders like these. So the more time you can spend talking to them, learning from them, and their peers, the better off or the easier it's going to be for you to penetrate into jobs and opportunities that they're offering.
I have just one thought to add to that. So the story about the two kids that I interviewed, not surprisingly, the first one then did not follow up at all. And the second one sent me an article that she thought was important about something happening on the issue. Like, not sure you saw this, but I thought this might be helpful. So.
All right. Last question I'm gonna ask, and then we're gonna get to you. Barriers. I want you to talk about what are some of the barriers that you have to overcome, work through, fight against in your respective sectors. Because I think a lot of times we always talk about what's good about and what's the high places. What are those challenges that you have to be strong enough and endure through within your various sectors and their expertise? Anyway.
Sure, I'll take the first stab at that. A couple things that come to mind. First of all, you know, when we talk about CSR, you know, we're still a business. And I was just having this conversation again, you know, with Rena. CSR is a cost center, okay, for those folks that, you know, looking at business models, right? What that means is that it's an investment being made by a company. It doesn't matter if it's Wells Fargo, a small business, it doesn't matter. Companies will set that aside and say, okay, here's my investment for the year, but it's difficult to project the revenue gain from that, right? We're giving grants and foundation support. It's not generating revenue per se, right? So a lot of times when you're looking at a business model, right, it's a cost center, and cost centers are areas where you have to evaluate the role they play in your business, you know, model moving forward. So that's a challenge that anyone who works in CSR is going to have to deal with. There's a lot of work being done now on supporting the business case for CSR. We know it's important. We know that having causes that align, that the way we do business is as important as the business services you provide. But nonetheless, it is a cost center. So it's always a challenge to justify why we need to spend millions of dollars on certain initiatives. The other side of that is, like, as we mentioned, having tough skin. You know, we can't make everyone happy, you know, and that's a challenge. We're not going to be able to solve the need by one company, right? It's a collective, and as much money as you can throw into an issue, it's never going to solve the issue. And we're facing that now with housing. That's a big issue for us. We throw millions of dollars into the housing causes and initiatives, and it's been ongoing for years, and it's still an issue, right? So we're never going to be able to please folks. We're never always going to, you know, be able to support every single initiative. So it's a challenge that we have to look at every year, which ones we're going to support, how we can get behind, and how do we move the needle. And so it's a challenge for us to do that. So those are two areas that I think that we constantly face, that, you know, we want to help everyone out, but we can't. We just don't have, you know, infinite resources. And then we also have to justify the expense as a whole. And, you know, I'm happy that, you know, Wells Fargo, we are leaders in that field. We don't see it as a cost center for us. We see it as an investment in our communities to support. But nonetheless, it's still an issue for other corporations and companies to understand why you need to spend the millions of dollars on corporate social responsibility and what that means. It's a term that's, kind of still being defined in many ways. I think it's a challenge. It's existed for so long, but nonetheless, it's still a term that's being gravitated towards. What does that really mean to have a corporate social responsibility policy? What does this turn into? How does this help our business? Does this support, us moving forward? Where do we stand? So there's a lot of questions still being looked at, a lot of great work being done on the field to evaluate those things. So it's something for you to be mindful of and understand that there's going to be challenges as we continue to grow in this field.
For me, it's the word no. When I get a no, I think in my mind, how do I turn it into a yes? I have 2 accounts for charities. Wells Fargo holds them. They always turn me down. I'm constantly knocking on their door. So guess who I'm calling in a minute. No, it's the best barrier there is. I'm forced to be more strategic. I'm forced to collaborate with others. I'm forced to look at the programs that I'm offering, the mission that I support, and how it fits their needs. It makes me stronger, my message stronger, and it makes it so that these guys, Wells Fargo and others, will finally work with us to accomplish our goal.
And I think in our space there's also a movement, as you alluded to use data and metrics and be able to make the case for what we do in a way that communicates to the business side. So many of us started in the work we do because of some sort of heart or passion, but I know my first few years, certainly I felt completely over my head in any kind of a finance conversation. And at the meta level, one of the conversations going on is, are we measuring the right things anyway? If all we're measuring are dollars, there's a group, if you don't know of them, Foundation Strategy Group out of Harvard, that does a lot of work on thinking about finance at the highest levels in this social sector. And if all we're measuring is a bottom line in a sheer dollars and cents way, we're not recognizing the impact we're having, business especially, on our communities or our people or our environment. So part of it is that the whole paradigm needs to shift a little, but I think, certainly in my world as practitioners, we need to be able to make the case that the way we choose to spend our time and money delivers an impact that is measurable. Otherwise, especially with something like communications, which can be seen as a soft skill, and so to fund a communications initiative when you could be feeding people, you really need to be able to explain how that's going to be able to help you feed more people, or you're going to lose right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So.
I do want to say, so we touched on ROI and how important metrics are, and actually we had a good conversation about there's going to be the input and the output, but then there's the outcome and the impact. So something to consider, and every CSR professional really dives into that, is there's the numbers that are easy, which are volunteer hours or number of projects that we focused on. But what exactly is the impact on the social issue that you put in all that work for? And that, to me, I say is always a discussion that companies want to dive further into, because you ultimately want to know the impact. But another aspect, so a reminder, and this is a great opportunity, is by 2020, millennials will be the largest group as far as the workforce, over 50%. And you're very influential. If you go on, I believe now they're called, is it Create for Good? They used to be called Cause Marketing Forum, and they just changed their name, Engage for Good. I would go on this website, Engage for Good. They have a section under resources, and there you will find wonderful reports, statistics, data, and your future employers or current employers right now. If you ask them, why is CSR important? Then you can pull up and be in this Cone report right here, it says, or a latest study by really legit organizations. And let's see, over 65% of millennials are willing to do a pay cut in order for them to work for a company that's embracing social responsibility. So when you're working with employers and you're asking them why embrace CSR, you may not get the ROI right away in the next even month or two. But what I'd love to focus on is also it's really great for recruitment, retention, and people are hungry for impact-driven work. And when you have, so Imperative, which is imperative.com, they've done a study that people that are purpose-driven tend to be high performers in regards to work. And you want to hire people that are purpose-driven. And so CSR is important because in an HR perspective, you want people to feel like they have purpose. You may not be in the CSR department, that's totally fine. Frankly, someone in customer service and sales should be just as invested in their employer as the 3 people that are in the CSR department, which by the way is super common, it's that small. It doesn't matter how big a company is, Fortune 100 to 500, it's usually 1 to 3 people. So it is a competitive space. But when you're coming at it and going from the HR stance, it's really great for retention. Obviously, millennials are looking at sites and they're thinking, what has the company done? Are they sustainable? Do they have good practices? They will frankly turn down a job, most likely, if that company has a bad reputation. So it does impact as far as employee engagement. And that, to me, is a good business case because it costs businesses an insane amount of money to constantly rehire and retrain, and why not get it from the start, but also good practice. Invest in the people within, and then also give back in the community. Besides the business aspect, which is there should be an ROI.
And I would build on that, Rena, just by saying the barrier word I would say is access. Because do you even understand what the nuance of corporate social responsibility is? How is that different from the nonprofit space? And so when you want to go into the field, to your point of there being 3 jobs usually in a corporation, and you really want to go into a field of giving back, what are all the different ways that you can pursue to do that? Because there are a lot. And so how do you look at a nonprofit that's giving back? How do you look at a corporation that's giving back? How do you look at a sports team that's giving back? How do you look at community relations? How do you look at marketing? So access, all the different ways that this job has different terms and different aspects to it. How are you looking for all of them so you're using the terminology, which will really get you to the place that you want to be?
Put your hands together for this, man, this panel. All right. I'm gonna take a couple questions. Come on. Will you come to me? Come. I appreciate you. I got 1. Who else I got? Let me get, come on, 2. Sir, I saw you in the middle. 3, 4. Can I get 5? 6. Come on. I gotta get one on this side. Just we're gonna do rapid fire questions. Come on, sir. I'm gonna have to see if I got enough to come to batch. I'm gonna try to come your way. Rapid. If you can give us your name, 1 question. You know what I mean? Your name, tell us where you're from, give us your 1 question, and I'm gonna ask the panel if we can, everybody doesn't have to answer the question, so we can try to get everybody's questions, all right? All right, y'all got it? Because I'm known to make you feel bad if you don't follow directions, all right?
My name is Brian Lim, I'm from Norco College, and this particular question is directed primarily towards Luis Gonzalez, but anybody else on the panel may answer it. During your time in the military, what type of leadership skills and influences did you put into it, and what did you take out of it?
Wow, yeah. So military is a life-changing experience. I think you learn, again, mentioned servant leadership. It's really about putting yourself above others, and I think that's one of the biggest things that you come away from doing that. The other thing is adapting and overcoming. I think it's important to have the skill to be able to adapt to whatever environment you're put in. And that helps you also be able to be flexible when you're being told no, you're being told yes, you're being able to make that change. So those are very important. But you know, our primary focus was getting the job done. And I think that's so important that we lose sight that no matter what we need to do to get that mission or job or goal accomplished, that needs to be your priority. And the second piece is taking care of yourself and your team.
All right, thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you.
And he looked good in the suit, you know what I mean? Yeah, all right.
Hi, my name is Michaela Perry, and I attend Chapman University. And my question is, how do you handle some of the politics that come into play when you deal with corporate social responsibility?
We all look at
Right, like who?
All right, I'll take that one. It's part of the everyday job that we support. I think that, you know, it's tough because, you know, there's different things that you focus on: people, organization, and policy. So when we're looking at politics, we're looking at the policy aspect. How can we work with our legislative representatives to push or drive the needle in specific areas related to policy-oriented initiatives, especially with housing? So with housing, we're working with tons of legislative officials now, working with a lot of ways that we can get together behind support that actually drives policy to make an impact for our communities. So it's about building that relationship, working with them, and constantly juggling both aspects, because they have their initiatives, we have our initiatives, and it's about finding that common area where we can align and actually move the needle.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Neil. I'm a junior at Cal State Fullerton. My question was, we know that businesses can make mistakes, like Chipotle with the E. coli situation or BP with the oil spill. So how have you seen CSR used in your own company or others to help mitigate these kinds of situations?
I can take that one because we do a lot of crisis communications, and I think that increasingly honesty is the only way to go. And you know, it's a mea culpa for whatever happened, assurances for how it will not happen again, and then hopefully you can even use it to leverage something greater, lift up something you hadn't gotten into yet but wanted to. So hopefully you turn it into a positive.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Natalie Masters, and I'm from U of A.
Bear down.
Yeah, bear down. And my question is, in what way does corporate social responsibility play into kind of commenting and working in with social events that take place? For example, when Ben & Jerry's released their statement about Black Lives Matter, and how events that happen in the community and what role your positions or the corporations take in general, and how to respond, and if they respond to events that happen in America and that are kind of like triggering or about social responsibility.
I can take that. I talked earlier about the 100 organizations in 12 cities that have come together, and that's all around an initiative around racial healing. And so sometimes you're fortunate enough to be a part of something where you step in, and you're able to be a part of something that sometimes is risky, edgy, and different. And I'm really glad that the organization that has funded all of it is actually the Kellogg Foundation. And they have asked for people to lend their voices and to start to figure this out in our communities across the country. And so in that case, I have seen all of these organizations, and particularly the cities, particularly Los Angeles as a city, and to have some real conversations between the mayor's office in South LA and Boyle Heights and the Valley, and really talk about as a city, how do we all function together? So that's one, and it's called the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Initiative, and you can find it online. This is the first of 3 years, so hopefully there'll be some success and stories to share.
Yeah, I'd just add to that, you know, with Wells being a Fortune, 50 company, we take a lot of stances on certain issues, especially now with DACA. I think, our CEO released a statement. We signed on with other big corporations like Apple and so forth supporting. So one of the benefits that you do have of being part of a great corporate social responsibility team is that you can take on those issues that sometimes are controversial and make a statement with it. So I think that that's one of the benefits of working with a great organization that has a great CSR plan, where you can take an initiative on it, but not only take a stance on it, but then provide funds to support it. And so that's what we're doing now, working on different ways that we can support our DACA initiatives to support that.
Thank you.
Hello there, my name is Cesar Dominguez. I'm from Cal State LA. My question is, with you guys researching so many nonprofits, can you share an example of a good mission statement that you guys come across and how it stands out from the others?
Question.
It is a good question.
Well, I see tons of mission statements.
That's
I think the most important thing is that the mission statement is clear and concise, not overviewing a 35,000-foot level. I think that a lot of times organizations, even from a business perspective, forget how important a mission statement is. And sometimes you get a mission statement that's like half a page long, and it's like, that's not a mission statement, right? We want it to be a concise, clear, few sentences that ties into exactly what the organization is doing. And I think sometimes, I get the 35,000-foot level, we're all about saving the world speech. And quite frankly, as you mentioned before, that's not really, that's great, but we want to know what you're actually doing. So it's important to be concise with your mission statement, important to look at successful mission statements. It's not about how much words you have in it, it's about what the mission statement says. And I think it's important. There's so much material now on how to write a mission statement. I know our comm folks here, that we go through this all the time. But I suggest that, definitely do some research on how to write a great mission statement so that we can look at what your organization really does.
I'll also say that one person doesn't write a mission statement. These organizations have boards of directors. We also have communities with which we serve. So if we can get representatives of the community as well as the board to work together on crafting a mission statement, even using a consultant to guide us in a strategic fashion, we're going to build the right mission statement, which is going to match what they're looking for when it comes to funding, engagement, that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jason Henderson from Norco College. First of all, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to speak with us, because I know you kind of given us some valuable information. But what I wanted to ask is, have there ever been any kind of situations where an initiative or a cause has seemed relatively straightforward but kind of devolved into like a nightmare? And if so, how do you kind of take corrective actions to kind of solve those issues?
You're going to hear me talk about clarity in every part of everything that I do. And that's just another, I think that issues led by collaboratives are among the most challenging because you have multiple parties to answer to. So we just had one approach us about wanting to provide school access to everyone, simple, broad issue. And then in talking to their committee, that's not even what the other partners at the table wanted to accomplish. So we try to start every project that we do with a simple, clear purpose statement. And by the time we were in the 3rd month of trying to get agreement on a purpose statement, we decided that this might not be a fit for our agency. So it's really the number of people involved, lack of clarity.
I also just want to say that you can actually come into a situation and be in crisis mode and then have it become kind of like a corporate social responsibility opportunity, which is also another great lesson that you can look at a crisis. So for instance, unfortunately with 9/11, I was working for a concert promoter and we were putting on a 2-day music festival called Doheny Days, and all the main acts had canceled. So who wants to go to a music festival when most of the main acts had canceled? Rightfully so, because no one wanted to get on a plane. And that was an opportunity. So instead of shutting down the concert, I worked with our CEO to where let's make it a benefit. Let's work closely with American Red Cross. Let's engage the community. Let's invite firefighters. Let's get them involved. Let's really embrace service. And let's also not only collect donations for monetary funds, but really address this issue and have it be authentic. And so we still had the music festival, but the theme was very still purpose driven, and it brought people together. And so you can still have a tragedy, but then still be creative in addressing it, but be respectful.
Great example.
Thank you so much for being here today and providing us with such great perspectives and insight. My name's Joseph Burton. I actually attend Dominguez Hills. And my question is that I recently just started a not-for-profit, and it's actually a grassroots wellness program for the blind and visually impaired. And my question is how does a grassroots not-for-profit startup obtain corporate sponsorship or corporate support at such a minuscule level?
Can I dive in again? I'm super passionate about this. I love nonprofits. I do. Even if I'm working with corporations, I'm ultimately how does this benefit the nonprofits? So there's different ways that you can engage companies. I think, as you know, there's thousands of nonprofits asking for monetary fund. One of the best ways I would suggest is create volunteer opportunities in which you are then in alignment with the employees of the companies that you're going after. Usually, and there's certain companies, I can't recall if Wells Fargo is this way, they won't even consider donating to a nonprofit unless they have a person that's on the board or employees invested. So once you start creating volunteer programs in which you engage employees and corporations, then they start getting more committed, and it would be great if there's a Dollar Stewards program or a grant that they can apply with their company that can then funnel back to your nonprofit. So I would say really look into volunteer program, whether short-term or long-term, engage different corporations. And the second aspect is when you're creating your marketing material, obviously there's some companies that are going to be drawn as to what are the benefits. You can look at it as far as from large scale to small scale, because you said you're grassroots, it's not like you're putting on a gala, but maybe they can invest in a program and they can be part of it. So when I was working at Dress for Success, I ran the West Coast division. And we work closely with Walmart, and Walmart invested in a program that was called Going Places Network. And so they funded that program, and not only did they fund it, but they helped develop the program. So they were invested in it. We went through all the documents together, we provided metrics, and they were branded in every event that we did. So incorporate them and make a corporation feel like they're a partner, and they're probably going to be more invested. More than anything, get their people involved, because then you don't just have one point contact, you have several people in that company that are now committed.
Yeah.
Can I add a sentence to that, though? There also might be a readiness issue. If you're truly grassroots, it might be about strengthening your board and making certain your board can step up with what you need first. I know most corporate partners have a level that they need you to be at before they can really get invested.
We can talk a little later offline if you want. I'll give you some great insight as to how we go about
Great.
it.
Thank you so much.
All right, we got 4 minutes, so.
Hi, I just want to thank you guys so much for coming out here. My name's Angela. I come from Norco College, and thanks, guys. My question for you guys is pretty simple. Just what have you found to be the most fulfilling in your careers, and was that something that surprised you, or is it something that you expected beforehand?
I'll go first. I didn't even know this was going to be my career, so everything about it has been a surprise. But the most surprising for me is how much I love disaster work. I did not know that that would be something that I ended up specializing in when I worked at CAA. It just happened to be a time frame when we had a lot of disasters. And so after Katrina, they moved me there. And they said, you know, figure out how here in New Orleans and here in Houston, where families are moving and clients want to support something, how do we do that? After Haiti, they moved me there. What do we give to on the ground? When CNN was doing the telethon and they wanted to do 12 organizations that they were going to recommend that America funds and gives to, what are the 12? So that kind of became a specialty of mine, and it was something completely unexpected that I loved.
I want to add real quick. To me, it's impact. Seeing a child receive a meal, seeing a college student receive a scholarship, yesterday's Career Fest, those are all moments that feed you. It's amazing. They send chills up your spine, up and down. It's better than anything that you've ever felt before. I know my purpose in life is to give back, to help others, and when I see somebody smiling because of something they received, it's the most amazing gift ever.
Yeah, this is very fulfilling work. I don't think you'll find anyone who says that it's not. So everything we do, whatever aspect of it is, you're very fulfilled knowing that you're giving back, creating impact, and helping others.
That's wonderful. Thank you, guys.
Hello, how you doing? My name is Kevin, and I go to York College. It's in New York, Jamaica, Queens. So as a social worker, I was taught that in order to create change, you have to find the root to the cause. So my question is, how do businesses and nonprofit organization takes the steps to find the root into the causes within the communities?
I think that depends a lot on where you're working along the food chain. You know, there's this fable about a river and babies are floating down the stream and the villagers run out and are pulling the babies out one at a time, and then the elder comes out and runs up the stream and they all ask where she's going, and she says, I'm going to go see who's throwing in the babies. And I think it's just where you are in your career or the different work that you do. A lot of us like to work at the strategy level. Not to minimize, you know, hungry folks still need food, so there's all of that. But yeah, it's just where you enter the work that you want to do. It's in my experience, it's collaborative through kind of the big thinkers at everything from corporate partners to government to business.
Yeah, there's a lot of research-based organizations that we partner with that really can provide that data and that metric. So we work with a lot of folks, you know, on the legislative level to the grassroots level to try to find out what those root causes are, right? But again, it's all about the data that we have. Each community is different, so how you solve a problem in one community is not going to necessarily be the same how you solve it in another. Yeah. So it's about having that relationship, that collaboration, and that constant metrics. That, I mean, if you don't like research, you're in the wrong field, because everything we do is about reading and research and what we're going to do and how we're moving the needle. So there's a lot of work that goes into that, and there's a lot of folks that just dedicate their entire careers to doing that. And so we do listen. It just depends where we're getting all that data and research from.
And my son's a social worker, so good for you.
Come on, put your hands together for this wonderful panel. Come on. In some of your communities, I think Mickey said it the best, in some of your communities, if you don't think that the problem, the root of the problem is being expressed, then you should be the one to tell that story. So we just want to let you know that you have the power to tell that story. I mean, especially millennials with all that's going on with technology at your hands, you can tell a story accurately. So we want you to do that. You got two homework assignments. Number one, Pete gave it to us. You need to get to meet everybody in the room. You need to meet everybody in the room because these are going to be your colleagues. And these are people you're going to work with. And then number two, you should want to really meet our panel, but you should always, you got to know how to be concise. You got to know how to build real relationships. And, you know, the worst thing to ever do is to come up to them and take all their time and say, I want everything from you. So learn cues. So, you know, make sure you know that there are like 100 other people who want to talk to them too. So make sure that you're being your conversation is being meaningful. All right, did we get that? Everybody well? We feeling good? All right, one more time, put your hands together for this wonderful panel. Someone's coming to give me directions on what we're doing? Boom, I love it. All right, you're dismissed. Thank you.